by engaging the public in creative experiences, we are able to provide vital support for artists, filling financial gaps in artists' needs and using art to build our communities. HaloArtsProject was founded in 2019, and our core values are to embrace diversity and support a diverse range of visual artists. We applaud innovation and challenges and work for artists while they establish their roles as part of a larger community of other artists and citizens. I remember being challenged when working on a very large canvas, needing to get them to another building for critique. A FedEx driver offered to take them from one building to another. This was the germ of the idea behind HaloArtsProject. My creative process was challenged in solving a logistical problem. A fun event we host is Angels for Artists. Artists donate their skills by working on a 10-inch by 10-inch visual and give it to HaloArtsProject to be auctioned to the public in support of fellowship awards. These awards range between $1,500 and $2,500. Artists can apply for these Halo fellowships to further their creative process, even if it means supplies or rent. We want to support the financial gap in artists' needs, and that's the reality. Thank you so much to our Halo donors, the Petrucci Family Foundation, DMM, and Stanford Network. Of course, all our private contributors and all the artists for their generous donations and for believing in our process and our mission.
This pandemic has created a national crisis, and so the idea was to create a fine art video game called Corona Killer. And the idea was to create a game that would bring visuals to the coronavirus. Like, this is something that you can't see, and things that you can't see create a different kind of fear than the things that you do see.
An interesting challenge, actually. A lot of this work sort of started at the beginning of COVID. I mean, it's been brewing for a long time, but I began a collaboration with another local artist right at that moment. And there is like a component of the work which is dealing with societal structures and how they fail us. And how, so I create these challenges of having no resources, but gathering what I can around me and figuring out how to make something out of it in a successful way.
I've painted let's say about 3 paintings during my time in Romania, which is relatively recent. But they're all about what COVID is. I've been stuck for about 3 months, completely not isolated, but lonely.
The one thing that has happened in the pandemic that would have never presented itself, because I'm so deadline oriented, is I've gotten into a bunch of collaborations with people, and that presented itself because things just slowed down or dried up or things got pushed back. And so all of a sudden I had time to like play with other people.
Pre-COVID, I'm an artist who's I'm expressing things in a very chaotic way, very random, very just whatever comes to mind is what I'm making. And I've taken classes at Ringling designed around world building is what they would call it, and that's just like you study things like Walt Disney's universe he's made, like Lord of the Rings universe or Star Wars or something. And now, like, coming out of school, things take a back seat when real life is introduced, and I work like a full-time job.
When I think about how this year started and how COVID has affected my life this year, at first, what's funny, I liked when they had the shutdown, when everybody had to stay in the houses and couldn't go anywhere. I was happy because I got to stay in the house and paint and didn't have to worry about going somewhere.
It's been a strange year for me in that it's also been a year of joy, in that I've got my first grandson, and that's something to look forward to. In terms of artwork, though, COVID has really helped me think through a little bit more what my goals are. And I think it's really brought a greater sense of mortality and urgency to continue to do work in the way that I want to work. I've decided to leave the gallery I've been in for the last 2 years because I really want to focus on doing artwork that I think is truer to my heart rather than might be more appropriate for that gallery.
And then one of the other things I've done through this time was develop a self-portrait. This portrait is me with a mask, and first I have a hello on it, and there's Black Lives Matter, BLM, and then 2020, and then you can see the elements of the COVID virus. You also see the images of the police virus, right, as also as a virus. And if you look up, you'll also see the White House that has a Confederate flag, and I speak to the Trump administration's support of Confederate iconography and some of its various racist policies. And then you also see to the right General Lee's statue ready to be taken down, and in a projected image of George Floyd. You also see here the American flag on the lapel turned upside down, speaking to where we are as a country. This 2020 has turned us upside down. And you also see the vote sticker, I voted, and how voting is so important to the democratic process, and how in the end, freedom of expression and the power to vote is such an important tool to be able to navigate through these kinds of issues that we had in 2020.
So over here in the corner are the palette strips from Home Depot that they throw out. That it took me a while to figure out what they were, because you see them and someone went to great lengths to carve this little niche in there. And I looked at it and I was like, you know what that is? That is a Barnett Newman zip painting sculpture waiting to happen. And so that's what happens to me when I'm looking around Home Depot, is I have these inspirations that, And this is part of the challenge, though, of what I was talking about, of just using what's at hand to make this work, right? The strips were at hand, and there's no fancy woodworking or anything. It's just, how am I going to pull this together? How am I, and any parent relates to that idea of all of a sudden you have this kid and you got to make them successful. And you got no training to get them there,
School, not being able to go to school because everything is online. Friends not being able to hang out because their parents are afraid, or they're living with their grandparents, and that influences the fact that you cannot see as many people as you'd like. And the paintings are mostly about loneliness in some cases. I have a painting that's called Lonesome Air, and it's a figure that has this quite melancholic face. It's very deconstructed in a way, but just the expression on their face is, this is okay in a way, but at the same time, I don't like it.
Another thing that happened in the pandemic is I started taking commissions, which I don't do, because often people, they like my style, but they want me to do animals I don't necessarily do, or, so this is actually a commission piece of another artist from Atlanta, and she's really into octopuses, and at first I was hesitant because I was like, I don't know, but I think it came out okay. So it's a wall hanging, and right now I'm adding the glazes, and this will be a nice matte black and then a pink with a brighter pink on the tips. And then I think I'm gonna do gold luster, which is the third firing, but it's the real bright gold on these little dots and in the eyes. So it'll be an extra pop. I just started teaching online and working in here. You know what I mean? my life didn't get rocked. And in a weird way, I'm super grateful for that, because I think it would have been harder, it would have been much harder for me to cope with if like I was in a communal studio and that got shut down, or any of the other circumstances that a lot of people have had to go through. I feel like I was in a good space in order to cope with the pandemic.
And, you know, I guess there comes a point where you can like see them as two different branching things and say, well, I have my artwork and my full-time work takes away from that. Or in my experience, I kind of like, they've kind of come together, and I've put myself into my work of woodworking and making furniture and stuff, and it's become something I'm interested in addition to that personal world that I've made. And you know, I can like be in that for a month and not touch my personal art world, you know, and then in that month I'm taking in all this data and like all this, you know, this person acted this way to this person, how do I feel about that, you know, well, wow, now like the shop has to close for, you know, health reasons, how do I feel about that? Can that be reflected in that personal world I'm working on? And that's kind of how my artwork has evolved post-school, where it's just kind of, you know, you go between modes. It's more of an ebb and flow. But now that I'm in the world, I like having the two worlds and being, you know, it takes pressure off my personal art to be anything that I don't want it to be.
But as it kept going on, when I heard all the statistics about African Americans being or getting the brunt of COVID, I saw the inequities in the system and just the tragedy of being a throwaway people. This is one painting that I'm very, very proud of. I've done during the time of COVID, and it's called Tar Baby, and it's painting on tar paper. And the hair on this so-called throwaway person is his crown. And in his crown are people. These are people up here. Ancestors. There's a woman right there. Sometimes they pop out on me. Most times they pop out on me. I don't purposely put them there. They show up. Like right now, I just saw this like a baby in this person's arms, right here. Black people worked in tar factories, and they call them Tar Heelians because they always had black feet. So the feet were black on the top and black on the bottom. And they were not kings and queens. But this is a king and a queen. And this crown fits. I had a show, and a woman came up to me and asked me the name of the painting, and I told her it was Sunshine on My Shoulders. And she said, oh. And I left the place because she was still there when I left, and the next day they told me she bought that painting. What had happened was that her husband had died that same year, like 3 or 4 months before. He had passed away. That was their favorite song, and it was his favorite song. And she told me that when she touched that painting, she got an electrical shock. That's why I paint.
With this kind of release from that COVID has given me, I'm actually painting, drawing much more loosely. I'm enjoying that work more. And I feel like I'm finding my own voice. The subject matter of my artwork, I think, is still reflective of kind of a interest in things that are disappearing, whether it's iconic images, roadside signs, old places. I do sometimes think that my interest is more from a bygone era. So maybe I'm going backwards as I'm going forwards, but COVID in a strange way has given me more things to look forward to, because it really forced me to re-examine what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. With the changing of the times now, I'm finding I have more time to work on things that I think are really important and that I want to achieve before time runs out. So anyway, I'm looking forward to 2021. New life is in the family and new work is on the horizon.